So we begin with the breaking news. A fresh trade war between the US and China has just kicked off. An hour and a half ago, the US went ahead with its promise of 10% tariffs on all Chinese goods headed to the US. China quickly responded and announced it's to do the same in a tit-for-tat spat that could impact the global economy. China's finance ministry is saying the measures against US goods would take effect next Monday. An extra 10% tax will be added to goods including crude oil and agricultural machinery. Imports of coal and liquefied natural gas will be hit with 15% tariffs. It's also saying it's filing a complaint with the World Trade Organization over the action from the US. In Asia, stock markets were riding high earlier today, with Hong Kong's Hang Seng opening up over 3% higher. The Nikkei 225 in Tokyo was up more than 1.5%. But since the announcement of new tariffs in the US and China, the markets are now muted. Dr. Harry Broadman is a trade expert with Rand Corporation and told me this is just the beginning.
It's just the latest chapter in our relationship with China, I think really epitomized by how Trump sees China as a mano-a-mano bargaining situation, just like, and frankly, he did with Canada and Mexico. And China is very smart. They've picked U.S. exports that are very sensitive to U.S. firms, and you can be sure that those firms are giving an earful to Mr. Trump right now.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how this plays out. President Trump is saying he's going to speak to President Xi later this week. He had phone calls with Claudia Sheinbaum yesterday and Justin Trudeau of Canada. That seemed to lead to a good result. Could we see the same for China?
Sure, and I believe that Xi is expecting that, because now the cat is out of the bag, that this is how Trump wants to use tariffs as a beginning, perhaps, of a discussion. It's quite extraordinary. If you're in a real serious trade war, you're not expecting to then get on the phone with the head of state just after you've imposed something. So I think this is quite orchestrated by the way that Trump sees the world and what he wants to use as a bargaining chip. And what's also extraordinary is some of the items that are coming up in the trade war are not necessarily economic merchandise items, but other things like the border. And so it's as if that Trump sees tariffs as his only tool in the toolkit to try to change our policy with respect to other countries.
With Canada and Mexico, some might argue it was quite simple to promise to President Trump what he wanted, i.e. much more security at the border, many more measures to prevent fentanyl crossing across, etc., etc. With China, it's not so simple, is it?
Absolutely not. I mean, our supply chains, as everyone knows, with China are quite sophisticated and quite complex in terms of both up and down the supply chain. So I think this is not just a question of fixing a border or dealing with a drug problem. Not that those are insignificant, but you have a network of factories and supply chains, ships, trucks, consumers, workers. Everybody is affected when you have the two largest economies of the world beginning a trade war. Now, whether this trade war actually turns out to be a trade war, and Xi and Trump speak on the phone, which was already planned, who knows? Maybe in the next day or two, Xi will say something that will satisfy Trump. I don't think so, but I think that's the theatrics that is going on in the background here, and it really undercuts, I think, Trump's strategy to try to be a strong man relative to other countries around the world using tariffs.
Dr. Harry Broadman there, who was a former US Assistant Trade Representative and Chief of Staff in the US President's Council of Economic Advisors. So interesting to get his take on things.